My name is Eli Turner. I'm 24 and I didn't take over the family business. In a place like Spokane, Washington, that's pretty much a declaration of war. My grandfather started Turner& Sons Timber back in 1964 with nothing but a chainsaw and a rusted-out pickup. My dad, Warren, took it from a two-man logging crew to a full-scale operation with contracts stretching across the Cascades. Around here, the Turners are known for their calloused hands, muddy boots, and work days that start before the sun does. And for the longest time, I figured I'd follow that path. But then, when I was 12, my uncle gave me an old laptop he was going to throw out. I spent an entire summer learning how it worked, breaking it, fixing it again, building simple programs. While other kids were hauling lumber or learning how to sharpen chainsaws, I was teaching myself Python and dreaming of neural networks. My dad didn't understand. "That computer ain't going to keep you warm when you're out of work," he'd mutter whenever he saw me bent over a screen. By the time I got to high school, the divide between us had deepened. I stopped going to the yard with him on Saturdays. He stopped asking. He wanted me to go to trade school, get my CDL, start learning the ropes from ground up. I had different plans. I applied to the University of Washington's computer science program and got in with a full scholarship. I still remember how quiet the room got when I told him. He looked at me like I'd told him I was moving to Mars. "You're walking away from everything we built," he said, low and sharp. "This business has your name on it." I wanted to scream that it never felt like mine, but I didn't. I just nodded, packed my things, and left for Seattle 2 months later. That was 4 years ago. Since then, I've built a data analytics platform that helps small manufacturing firms predict equipment failure before it happens. It's not glamorous, but it's real and it works. And last week, I got an email from a major VC firm out of San Francisco. They want to invest. Big. I haven't told my dad. He still thinks I'm tinkering with code junk in someone's basement. I haven't been home in over a year, but in a few days, that'll change. Because if this deal closes, if it becomes what I think it could, I'm not just showing him I made it. I'm showing him that the Turner name doesn't have to end in sawdust and diesel. It can evolve. And maybe, just maybe, he'll see that too. I drove back to Spokane on a Friday afternoon, the kind where the sun makes the pine trees glow gold and the air smells like sawdust and diesel. It'd been 16 months since I last saw my father, not because of some huge argument, but because we both got tired of pretending. He'd stopped returning my calls after the second time I mentioned a seed round, said he was too busy keeping a real business alive. As I pulled into the gravel lot outside the Turner & Sons office, I saw his truck was still there. Same dented bumper, same custom plate that read "Timber Guy." I parked next to it and stepped out, nerves knotted in my gut. I wasn't sure if I was here to reconnect or just to prove a point. He was in the main office leaning over invoices with a pencil tucked behind one ear. When he looked up and saw me, his face went blank for a second before settling into something unreadable. "Didn't think I'd see you before Thanksgiving," he said, voice flat. "I figured it was time," I replied, trying to match his tone. There was an awkward pause, like two radio stations trying to talk over each other. Then I pulled the contract from my backpack. An LOI from Ridgepoint Ventures for a $3.6 million Series A. "I came to show you something," I said, placing the document on his desk. He looked at it for less than 3 seconds before pushing it back. "I don't care how much money someone throws at you. That's not real work." I felt the blood rush to my ears. "You haven't even read it." "Don't need to," he said, leaning back. "You still don't know how to fix a busted belt drive or run a loader. But you think you're some kind of genius now?" "I've built something, Dad. Something real. My software is already saving mid-sized plants 6 figures a year on downtime. You know all those breakdowns you're always complaining about? I can help with that." He shook his head slowly. "We don't need computers telling us how to do our jobs." That's when I realized it wasn't pride holding him back. It was fear. Fear that if my way worked, everything he built was obsolete. I stood up. "You're not even curious. That's the worst part. You'd rather believe I'm failing than admit I might have done something right." He didn't reply, just stared at the wall behind me like he couldn't even look at me anymore. I walked out without another word, heat burning behind my eyes, but as I stepped back into my car, I didn't feel broken. I felt fueled, like every rejection, every doubt, every door slammed in my face was just more kindling. Because deep down, I knew he'd be the last person to believe in me, and the first to regret it when it worked. The Monday after that conversation with my dad, I flew back to Seattle with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. I didn't cry on the plane, didn't even get mad. I just stared out the window as the Cascades slid by, thinking, This isn't about changing his mind anymore. It's about proving I was right to believe in mine. By Thursday, we launched the pilot. Turner Tech wasn't flashy. It was 4 people in a shared workspace above a coffee roaster in Capitol Hill. We had 2 desks, a mini fridge, and a whiteboard so filled with scribbles it looked like a conspiracy theory map. But our software, the SmartOps platform, was the real thing. We had landed our first test client, a regional wood processing plant in Idaho called Clearwater Timber. Not a big name, but just big enough that if it worked there, people would notice. Clearwater gave us access to their downtime logs, maintenance records, and live sensor data from the floor. In 72 hours, we found 6 inefficiencies their internal team had missed for years. Things like scheduling overlap between inspection and loading, lag time between machine resets, and a bottleneck that was costing them $28,000 a month in idle labor. I still remember the plant manager's face when we walked him through the dashboard. "You found this with code?" he asked, eyebrows halfway up his forehead. "With logic," I said, grinning. By the end of the second week, Clearwater's team had slashed their unplanned downtime by 18%. By week 4, it was 31%. That was the moment everything started to change. Word spread. Not fast. This was still the timber industry, but fast enough. A cousin of the Clearwater CEO ran procurement at a mill near Coeur d'Alene. Then another contact in Oregon. Within 6 weeks, we had 3 pilot contracts signed and 2 more in the works. Investors who used to ignore my emails were suddenly circling back to chat. Journalists from niche manufacturing blogs reached out for quotes. My inbox went from a graveyard of unread pitches to a war zone of meetings, requests, and offers. But none of that hit me the way one email did. Subject line, Turner Tech Inquiry. Sender, info, turneransons.co. It was from my father's company. A scanned copy of a work order, attached. 3 photos of a busted conveyor at one of his plants, and a note at the bottom. "Saw what you did at Clearwater. We've got downtime we can't afford. Anama, can your system help?" No name, no greeting. But I knew who had sent it. I stared at the screen for a long time, not with smugness, not even satisfaction, just relief. Not because he finally asked for help, but because I knew I didn't need his validation anymore. I had proof. Real-world, bottom-line, dollars and cents proof that what I built mattered. That night, I walked back to the office, opened the window, and let the cool Seattle air hit my face. I didn't text my dad, didn't reply to the email yet either. I just stood there, eyes closed, listening to the city breathe, and realized I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was building something, and it was working. 3 days passed before I answered the email from Turner & Sons. I wasn't ignoring it, I was calculating. Not in a ruthless way, just careful. When someone once told you to get real and get upbeat and now suddenly wants your software, you don't rush into a favor. You read between every line. So I wrote back, "We'd be glad to assist. Ich baue mich da aus. Our pilot package includes a 4-week implementation, remote diagnostics, and post-analysis recommendations. Standard terms apply. Let me know when we can onboard your team." I didn't sign it "Love, Eli," or "Your son." Just E. Turner, CEO, Turner Tech Systems. The next day I got a call. Eli, my dad's voice. Gravel and silence between syllables. "You could have just picked up the phone. You could have just picked up the last 3 years," I said, not harsh, just honest. He was quiet. "Then, so what's this pilot package going to cost me?" "Same as anyone else," I said, leaning back in my chair. $5,000 flat, plus success metrics. If we hit targets, you pay the bonus." A pause. "That's steep." "No steeper than letting line 3 go offline every 72 hours, I replied. He didn't argue, just grunted. "I'll have Jared send you the system specs by Monday." Jared, not me. Still couldn't say we need your help, but at least we were talking business. The following week, I flew out to Spokane for the site visit. First time back since the barbecue 3 years ago. The shop smelled the same, steel, sawdust, and diesel. A mix of labor and time. I half expected to hear my dad's voice yelling over the machines. Instead, I met Jared, mid-30s, friendly, and visibly overwhelmed. "We run 5 lines, 3 shifts, he said, handing me a clipboard. "Line 3 is the real issue. Keeps jamming. Maintenance says it's electrical. Engineering says it's operator error." "And what do you say?" I asked. He shrugged. "I say it is above my pay grade." I smiled. Not for long. We installed sensors that afternoon, ran baseline tests overnight. By Thursday, our dashboard flagged inconsistent torque values in the feeder motor, predicting a failure within 96 hours. A week later, it failed, right on cue. This time they were ready. Downtime dropped from 8 hours to 2. My phone rang that night. It was Dad. You were right, he said, low and stiff. I didn't say anything. You built something that works. Still nothing. And I'm glad you didn't listen to me back then. That one hit different. I almost choked on my breath. I didn't build it just to prove you wrong, I finally said. I know, he replied, but it did that too. We talked for a few more minutes about motors, margins, future contracts. When I hung up, I didn't feel like a son who'd won something. I felt like a man who'd earned it. Not through rebellion, not through revenge, but through value, through results. Sometimes the only way to rewrite a relationship is with numbers no one can argue. And that's exactly what I'd done. A week after the successful Line 3 rollout, I got a call, not from my father, but from Kara Linton, Turner & Sons finance director. She was sharp, direct, and didn't waste time. Eli, we need to talk about scaling this. I leaned back in my desk chair in Seattle, sipping coffee. Scaling? Yes. Your system predicted Line 3's issue down to the hour. That saved us nearly $22,000 in just 4 days. We want to expand to the rest of the facility, lines 1 through 5. I'm open to that, I said, but that's a separate engagement. New quote, new timeline. A brief pause. You'd charge your own father's company a second time? Turner Tech has never had a family discount policy, I said with a smile. Good tech costs less than downtime. Another pause, then a quiet chuckle. Fair enough. Send the proposal. I did. And to my surprise, she approved it within 48 hours. The next month was a blur. Our small Seattle team, me, Priya, and an intern named Malik, worked double shifts deploying sensors, writing integrations, refining alerts. By mid-March, Turner & Sons had reduced its average downtime by 41%, and word started spreading beyond Spokane. That's when things got interesting. One evening, I opened my inbox to find a message from Harlan Brewster, the COO of Evergreen Logistics, one of Turner's oldest partners. Saw what you did for Turner & Sons. We'd love to discuss implementing similar predictive tools on our packaging lines. Let's talk. 3 days later, I was in Portland, sitting across from Harlan in a glass conference room overlooking the river. He slid a folder across the table. This is a list of operational issues we've had in the last 6 months. If your system can help us cut even half of that, we're interested in licensing. That word, licensing. This wasn't just one contract anymore. This was momentum. By the time I got back to Seattle, we had 3 more inquiries, 2 from supply chain companies, 1 from a medical device manufacturer. And then the call came from my dad. You've been talking to our clients, he asked, not angry, but cautious. They've been calling me, I answered, all based on the results your floor produced. He was quiet. Dad, I didn't build this to sell it to you, I continued. I built it to solve real problems for anyone who values uptime over ego. He sighed. I'm proud of what you've built, Eli, but just be careful. The bigger this gets, the more people will want to take a piece of it. Maybe even turn it into something it's not. I understood what he meant. Not a warning, but a confession. He knew what happened when growth outpaced intention. Still, I couldn't stop. I wasn't chasing scale for vanity. I was following results. Turner Tech wasn't just working. It was changing the way people saw maintenance value in the future of work. And for the first time, I wasn't just building something in the shadow of my father's name. I was building something that might just outlive it. By April, Turner Tech had grown faster than I expected. What began as a side project in a 1-bedroom apartment was now a full-time operation with 5 employees, a dedicated client success manager, and contracts lined up through the summer. But with growth came pressure, from the outside and unexpectedly from within. It started with a meeting request from my father. He said he wanted to talk in person, neutral ground. We agreed on a quiet cafe near Moses Lake. He was already seated when I arrived, still wearing his work shirt with the Turner & Sons patch, sleeves rolled up. No blazer, no pretense. I sat down. You said this was about business? He slid a folder across the table. This is a licensing agreement draft, he said, from our legal team. We'd like Turner & Sons to have exclusive rights to your system within our sector. I opened the folder and skimmed. It was thorough, too thorough. Exclusive rights, meaning no other manufacturing client, even in unrelated regions or specialties, could license Turner Tech without Turner & Sons approval. I looked up. Why? My dad exhaled slowly. Because what you've built is powerful and valuable. We've had this edge for 3 months, and already other suppliers are asking questions. Evergreen, Fulton Steel, even Oxbow Mills. They all want what we have. We can't afford to share that edge. But you don't own it, I said quietly. I do. I know, he nodded. That's why I'm offering a buy-in. We'll acquire 51% of Turner Tech. You stay on as CEO, keep running the show, but the company's direction gets aligned with our long-term strategy. Yours becomes ours. There it was, the fork in the road. He wasn't being malicious. He was protecting what he knew. Oh, his world, his business, his bottom line. But I could see the same flaw in his logic that had always driven a wedge between us. The assumption that ownership meant control and control meant success. I closed the folder and placed it neatly back on the table. Dad, I get it. I do. But Turner Tech isn't just a tool for one company. It's a solution for an entire industry that's been flying blind for decades. If I sign this, I'm choosing walls over bridges. He didn't say anything, so I continued. You once told me that a man's worth is in what he builds. Well, I'm building this, and I won't sell it short, even to family. For a long moment, we just sat there, two versions of the same name with two different definitions of legacy. Finally, he nodded, slowly. Then let's find a different path. One where we're not fighting over the blueprint. I left the cafe that afternoon without a contract, but with something better. Mutual respect. It wasn't signed, but it felt binding. And in that, I saw a future where we didn't have to choose between old school grit and new school vision. We could build something together, just not by giving up what made it different in the first place. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Turner Tech was hitting its stride, refining our analytics engine, onboarding new clients, and finalizing a partnership with a mid-sized steelworks in Kansas City. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing more than proving something to someone. I was building something for real. Meanwhile, something curious started happening at Turner & Sons. My dad didn't bring up the acquisition again. Instead, he started sending me feedback from the floor, notes from supervisors, glitches in reporting, feature requests from his logistics guy. He was testing the system, not breaking it down, but trying to understand it. Like a mechanic finally respecting a piece of machinery he didn't build. Then one Thursday morning, I got a call from Clara, our customer success lead. You might want to look at the dashboards for Turner & Sons, she said. I logged in, numbers lit up across the screen, faster processing times, fewer unplanned shutdowns, improved throughput across all 4 lines. But what really caught my eye was the column labeled anomaly reporting. The foremen were actively using the tagging feature, not just tolerating it, owning it. I picked up the phone and called my dad. Someone's been giving my system a workout, I said. He chuckled. Just figured we ought to push it before everyone else gets their hands on it. That why you called in a performance audit from Meridian Logistics? Silence. Then, had to know if what you built could stand under pressure. And we got the cleanest report in the region. First time in 12 years. There it was, no big speeches, no long-winded explanations, just data and results. The only language we'd ever fully shared. But it didn't stop there. A week later, he invited me back to Turner & Sons. Not for a meeting, but for a walk through the floor. The same floor I used to sweep as a kid, now wired with sensors and dashboards we developed. Operators gave me nods. One even said, "Hey, you're the dashboard guy, right?" Something had shifted, not just in the factory, but in how they saw me, how my dad saw me. We finished the walk in front of the old shipping dock. He paused. "I was wrong, Eli," he said quietly. "I thought you were trying to outgrow the family, but really you're helping it grow in a way I couldn't." I didn't say anything at first, just stood there watching the forklifts move with measured purpose. This wasn't about replacing the past anymore. It was about building on it with tools the past never had. And finally, it was clear. We weren't just proving a concept. We were proving a new way forward. Together. 2 months later, Turner & Sons signed an exclusive enterprise licensing deal with Turner Tech. Not because my dad owed me anything, but because it worked. Because the data didn't lie. And for the first time in years, the plant was operating better than it had under any manual process he'd ever trusted. But it didn't end with just one factory. Word spread fast across the region. Smaller manufacturers, businesses like the one my dad used to consider too proud to change, started asking for demos. Not because they understood the code, but because they'd heard about the results. I found myself flying to cities I'd never considered visiting. Dayton, Des Moines, Fort Smith. In each, I met older factory owners who looked at me with a mix of skepticism and hope. I wasn't just selling software, I was bridging generations, giving them a way to modernize without losing their identity. Back home in Indiana, something even more important was happening. My dad, Nathan Turner, the same man who once said spreadsheets don't build things, stood beside me at our joint press event in Indianapolis. Behind us, a banner read, "Innovation Rooted in Tradition." I didn't always understand where Eli was going, he said into the microphone, addressing a room full of press and partners. But I understand now. He didn't want to replace what we built. He wanted to protect it by giving it the future it deserves. That line stuck with me for days, not because it was poetic, but because for the first time, he saw what I saw. The following week, he joined our leadership retreat, not as a guest, but as an advisor. He spoke about operational decision-making, managing crews, the mistakes no textbook will ever teach. The engineers on our team took notes like he was a keynote speaker at a tech summit. On the last night of that retreat, as we sat by the fire pit at the lodge, I asked him if he ever resented the way things had changed. He looked at the sky for a long moment, then said, "Not anymore. Legacy isn't about making your kids follow in your footsteps. It's about building a road wide enough for them to walk beside you." That hit me hard, because for years I thought success meant proving him wrong. But I realized the real win wasn't outshining the past, it was learning how to carry it without letting it weigh me down. Life lesson. Success doesn't have to be a rejection of where you came from. True success is finding a way to honor your roots while planting new ones. It's not about winning battles with the generation before. It's about building bridges they'd be proud to cross. Whether you're a coder or a craftsman, a startup founder or a legacy worker, what you build matters most when it connects people, generations, and values. Sometimes the most powerful innovation comes not from breaking tradition, but from evolving it together.